Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you're joining us from. It's great to see you all here today. Let's give us another 30 seconds for participants to log in. In the meanwhile, we would love to see where you are joining us from. Please type in your location in the comments as we have more participants pouring in. Okay, welcome everyone to today's LinkedIn live session. Our last conversation in September was around how GCCs are driving innovation and resiliency. Our focus of today's conversation is around how GCCs are shaping, delivering, executing future value propositions, and also building new capabilities for the future. We will explore some very interesting questions that are on your mind, such as how are GCCs identifying and prioritizing non-traditional areas, extending their scope beyond mature functions, and helping to play a stronger role in shaping and delivering the value proposition, as well as some important themes such as collaboration, integration, talent development, skilling, and so on. We wanted to bring in on the ground perspectives from industry practitioners in a more formal, informal, and interactive format. And we would love to hear your comments, questions as we go along. So please type them in, and we would try to address them during the discussion or during the Q&A towards the end. As a quick introduction, I'm Ashish Sehdev, Vice President at Everest Group, and I lead our business in the Asia Pacific region. Joining with us today, I'm pleased to welcome Sukna Roy, Head of GCC and BPM at NASSCOM. We also have two of our GCC award winners today, Ankur Mittal, SVP Technology and Managing Director at Lowe's India, and Deepak, who's a VP of Platform Engineering and Site Managing Director at Pegasystems. Um, I believe Deepak has been facing some challenge to join us, but he may join us in a few minutes. But in the meanwhile, let me hand over to Sukanya and Ankur to introduce themselves and share a bit about what they do. And Ankur, if you can also talk a bit about Lowe's, what Lowe's does in India, and then also talk about some of the exciting stuff that you're currently doing. So over to you, Sukanya.
Good morning and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it. My name is Sukanya. I head the charter for developing the ecosystem and driving growth for the GCC industry segment as well as BPM. What that means is, as NASSCOM, we proactively identify what would be some of the accelerators for the industry and then work with leaders and ecosystem partners such as Everest, leaders such as Lowe's, Ankur from Lowe's, to develop initiatives that will help organizations leverage those accelerators, mature fast on those parameters, and grow and create accelerated impact for their organizations and for the country. And the GCC ecosystem, especially, is extremely important for the industry and very relevant for NASSCOM because not only does it produce some very cutting edge work for their enterprises, they build a very key expert talent pool for the country. They help bring a lot of industry and technology and domain expertise, and they create a lot of ecosystem multipliers in terms of how they work with startups, with academia, and net add a lot of value to the country as a whole. And thank you for having me here, Ankur.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm Ankur. Before I talk a little bit about myself, let me introduce Lowe's to you. Some of the people who don't know about Lowe's. Lowe's is a $90 billion home improvement retailer, primarily based out of US, having around 1,700 stores, serving close to 22 million customers every week. Uh, Lowe's has been in the industry for more than 100 years now, and it employs close to 300,000 people, primarily in US and India. Lowe's India is the only GCC Lowe's has it, and we are based out of Bangalore. We are close to 5,000 people in Lowe's India. 70% of the workforce working on technology, and around 30% of the workforce is working in different businesses like merchandising, supply chain, marketing, finance, HR, and enterprise sourcing and Lowe's global sourcing. So that's a little bit about Lowe's and Lowe's India. And let me talk about my role, what I do in Lowe's, and what I've done prior to Lowe's. Uh, I have two roles in Lowe's. One is the Senior Vice President Technology, wherein I manage what we call is omnichannel platform, which is cart and checkout, which is powering Lowe's.com, point of sale systems, mobile checkout, all those things. Then last mile delivery, sourcing, promising, order management, inventory management. So that's omnichannel platform. And the second is enterprise architecture and engineering platform, which is primarily providing directions to the organization in terms of buy versus build. If it is buy, what to buy. If it is build, how to build, and what to build. And the engineering platform organization is providing the platform for our engineers to move fast. And the third organization which I have is infrastructure and operations. So all the infrastructure, technology infrastructure in our corporate offices, all these stores, supply chain buildings, in our uh, coastal holding facilities, and the operation related to the infrastructure is managed by my team. So that's my first role, and second role is managing the Lowe's India. Lowe's India started 9 years back, and we have constantly growing in technology and non-tech areas like merchandising, supply chain, as I talked about earlier. And next year we are going to be probably 10 years old. So that's
Awesome.
about Lowe's and Lowe's India.
Yeah, no, thanks, Ankur. Very, very excited, and thank you for joining us. Sukanya, before we dive in, I know there's a lot of action around the GCC Awards, and it's been the industry award for the GCC community. So let me take the opportunity to just invite you to just talk a bit about the awards. What was your observation? A bit of more context. I think a lot of GCCs who participated already are aware of the rigor, but I think there are a lot of new participants. So would love to just hear from
Yes.
you.
Absolutely. I think GCC Awards 2023 was held on June 1st as part of the GCC conclave, which we did in Bangalore. The awards is something that we do every alternate year, and Everest was our strategic partner in running the awards process end to end along with NASCOM. Um, the awards process is really, I look at it in two different ways. One is how do we celebrate and really thank the industry for doing the great work that we do, but very importantly, how do we also bring out those stories and those insights on how some of this great work is getting done? So not just what is getting done, but how, right? What is that process of getting to that level of maturity, impact, contribution? And the reason that journey is important is information shared, insights and experiences shared um, build a lot more confidence and a lot more understanding and brings out perspective in the industry. So for us, the awards play two three different roles. We celebrate the great work, we bring out the story, so we position the work to the outside world, and to we inspire many GCCs who are on that journey maybe at an early stage to think about what those impact areas could be. It just brings out opportunities and interests. So this year, and we also curate the award categories depending on what really is on mind of people, right? And this year we had five interesting category: innovation with impact, where you can actually quantify, in terms of money, time, and effort, the impact of the work. The stellar distributing model was, of course, an important area given that we were all adjusting to our new normal, or what NASCOM says now, no normal. Um, and then we looked into three very interesting category. One was rising stars, which was GCCs that have really set up operations during or just before COVID, and then rapidly enhanced their journey and created impact. And the two topics that we are talking about, which are somewhere related, is how GCCs are incubating completely net new capabilities, areas that were traditionally not thought suitable for the GCC or the offshore model. Two, how GCCs are being very proactive in thinking about what are those three, four areas that the organization needs to solve for in the future, and how can they proactively, set up those capabilities. So we had participation from about 150 organizations across value chain maturity, um, and we had many requests to extend the deadline. So I'm sure we could have another week extended. We could have had another maybe 20 organizations participating in, but we had to draw the line somewhere, and we'll be more proactive and we'll announce earlier. But the process was enriching in terms of how we went through the evaluation. We had a very proactive jury looking into those, and what we came out was a huge variety and range of case studies, and also very importantly, diverse capabilities and diverse maturity in terms of how many years those GCCs have spent in India. Deepak has been able to join us, so I'll take a pause, and Ashish, maybe you want to.
Yeah. So Deepak, glad I know you had some tech issues, but glad you could join us. So Deepak, we were just introducing. Maybe if you can just share a bit more about yourself, what Pegasystem does specifically in India, just to set context, and then we'll dive in.
Yeah, my sincere apologies, as as it always has, right? Just about the right time you have these difficulties. Also, as always, we tried everything yesterday, everything was fine, and suddenly this morning, I had all these tech issues in terms of being able to connect to. So my apologies. So just to make a quick introduction, I'm Deepak Vishweshwaraya. I'm Vice President of Platform Engineering and Managing Director for Pegasystems in India. I've been in the technology industry for about 35 years, playing various roles. In the last couple of decades, I've focused in terms of playing global roles based out of India, specialized in leading large engineering organizations, driving innovation, bringing products into global markets, what have you. Extensive experience in establishing some of the global capability centers for various multinational companies. I'm really passionate about building next generation technology, innovation, business leadership, mentoring startups, what have you. So some of that. Most recently, I was also the Senior Vice President and Managing Director for NetApp in India. I've served on the board of Indo-American Chamber of Commerce, and advisory board on a few companies as well. So that's a little bit of a introduction to me. Pegasystems is essentially a low-code platform, which is AI powered in terms of being able to really work through workflow automation, right? Meant for workflow automation. So think of it as a low-code, no-code platform using which our clients actually develop applications on top of the platform without having to write any code or much of code at all, in being able to solve their business problems, in being able to really work through their workflows, and being able to automate their workflows, being able to build applications to connect one-on-one with their customers and what have you. So let me stop there. So just so that since we are delayed, let's continue with the discussion you were having.
Sure, sure, Deepak. So Deepak, while you're at it, why not also share what were some of the new capabilities and some of the non-traditional work that you picked up in the last 12 to 18 months? If you can just spend a minute on that.
Absolutely. In the last 12 to 18 months, I think there is a lot of change and transformation in technology that has happened, especially in the space of generative AI, and which is not a surprise to anyone, right? I think everyone has actually gone through that. Very similarly, we've actually been in the forefront of that transformation. So, in fact, in India, at Pegasystems, we've always had the capability of artificial intelligence skill set, and the capability in the COE here, right, in the GCC. We were, predominantly focused earlier on NLP, which is the natural language processing, predictive and adaptive analytics, decisioning. Those were kind of the capabilities that we had built on, right? So what we did was to leverage that and then established a generative AI capability, within the center in the last year or so. And this group actually defines our generative AI strategy, our approach, and foundational stack across the board for the entire platform across the company in terms of how we do it. Just focusing on the what, that effort has really led us to bringing a bunch of generative AI capabilities that we've been able to bring to the market with our latest product release that happened just a couple of months ago. Really we started earlier in the year with a really great hackathon that to be able to really encourage people to leverage generative AI to solve several client use cases. Build, the objective was to build superior user experience, developer experience, productivity and efficiency increases, what have you. Since then, our product engineering organization has taken all of that, spent countless hours in terms of designing, piloting, developing new capabilities that is actually now available in the market as Pega Infinity 23, for that matter. That is one of the new capabilities that we have built out. A second one that I will briefly mention is our Pega University program, which is a phenomenal program. The Pega University program is a flagship program devised completely by Pega Systems in India, implemented by a couple of implementation partners. This has launched technical careers for about 10,000 plus students in the last 8 years in India, right? Starting with two partner colleges in 2016, it has actually transformed into 21 plus universities with 10,000 plus people, who built careers on Pega technology. This was such a good success story that now we are actually taking this program global, and then it is actually being in the last 12 months. We are actually implementing the same program globally across US, EMEA, APAC, what have you. With that same model, we're extending that model globally, for that matter, right? So those are probably two examples I will talk about, today.
Very, very, very exciting, very interesting, Deepak. So before we come back to you and try and extract some of the learnings from your journey and how you made it happen, let's invite Ankur. Ankur, why don't you share about Lowe's journey and what have you done in the last 12 to 18 months, specifically from the new capabilities as well as some of the new value propositions, that are non-traditional areas.
Sure, Ashish. I'll answer this question in two ways. One with respect to technology, and then second one would be with respect to the business. So we have been on this journey to become a omni-channel retailer. And when I say omni-channel retailer, everybody talks about omni-channel retail, and it's not just buy online, pick up in a store. It's about providing the experiences to our customers, however they want to shop with us, whether it is mobile app, desktop, or walking into our store and calling in our contact centers. So in last 3 4 years, we have been on this journey, and there was some different Lego pieces was there. So first of all, let's talk about self checkout. So self checkout is a very key capabilities for Lowe's, and we had some of the stores where we had very few self checkout centers, or some stores which did not have any self checkout counters. Over a period of last couple of years, the team in India has built the self checkout machine with using commodity hardware. They built device management, middleware, and the software. Everything was built in Lowe's India Center and then was transported to US to get the installs in our stores. The kind of results we have seen is that first is the self checkout is almost 80% cheaper than what we used to have from the vendor, 4 times more stable, much easier to make changes. You can manage centrally all the self checkout machines from India or from anywhere, wherever you want to be. And the biggest results, what we saw is earlier, whatever number of transactions was going through self checkout, it doubled when we installed the new self checkout. which means a significant amount of labor saving in the stores, and that labor now can be put into to have the conversation with the customers and make sure that we are able to sell the project and the whatever customer is looking for. So that was the one big piece, and then rolling out the new point of sale software to all the assisted checkout or the appliance desk and all those things, and making sure that now we have the capabilities where you can start your cart on the .com, but when you walk into the store you can check out the cart which you started on .com. Or if you walk into the store you don't find certain thing, the cashier or the at the self checkout counters you can add that thing, um, and that can be delivered to your home. So a lot of those experiences has been delivered to the Lowe's, and bunch of these things were significantly driven from India. Now let's talk about outside technology. So we have the merchandising and marketing team based out of Lowe's India, and if you look at it, 90% of our planograms and floor plans are designed in Lowe's India. So planograms is how much width you will have for the aisle and how many items, different brands, what kind of SKUs, how many units, all those things you will keep it in the aisles. And then floor plans is how much you will allocate to the paint department versus appliance department versus lumber and all those things. So 90% of Lowe's planograms, which counts to approximately 84,000 planograms and 2.5 million floor plans, are done from Lowe's India. Similarly, if you look at it, all the private brand packaging. So we have close to, I think, 10 12 billion dollars coming in from private brands, and all the private brands packaging material, how the logo will look like, where the instruction will go in, how different kind of graphics and things will go on the packaging, is done from Lowe's India. So I think these are a couple of examples where we have just gone beyond the regular things and developed something which is not heard of in the GCC space.
Yeah, very, very interesting. So I think I captured the Gen AI and the university programs from Deepak, and then the self checkout, the POS global rollout, and the design and packaging capabilities as well. So Kanya, and I'm sure you, based on what you've been seeing in the industry, what would be some of the other new areas that you're seeing emerging?
Yeah, I think there are two angles to it. One is the technology, right? Where are people incubating their new technology capabilities? And that more or less by default is India. What is interesting are examples that Ankur said, which are things that were traditionally very close to business, right? And Ankur gave some very great retail examples. But if we take areas like credit risk, right? If we take areas like vendor risk, financial risk, the entire management. I mean, we have organizations who are looking at a futuristic risk evaluation of their entire supplier landscape, and then coming up with risk models to kind of hedge for future and for BCP planning, especially after COVID. Um, Great examples of how ESG initiatives are being driven from India. Some organizations are very proactively building consulting capabilities which can go horizontal. So they are literally building teams that will take up a horizontal challenge of, let's say, enhancing customer experience by X NPS, and then going end to end through the organization across technology, operations, R&D, and looking at and systems, because you're also saying that, when you say customer experience, it's across probably 10 major applications, right? And how do you build that? So those kind of horizontal themes that are being driven as consulting projects, literally to transform with such kind of targets rather than as a technology initiative, as a process initiative. A lot of those are now being incubated in India as a team. We got examples of people managing their entire supplier relationships from India, which was very interesting. We had examples of people building core business capabilities around reinsurance, around credit risk, around um, managing treasury functions also. So very diverse from what we used to see. I feel like this angle of going closer to the business and solving business problems with the technology angle attached to it is what has been a very key shift in the last few years.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So Deepak, as we talk about these new capabilities, of course, we need to understand what are the goals and objectives of the enterprise. What's their big vision? What are the strategic gaps, value drivers? So question to you. I mean, in the past, of course, in India, we've seen several examples of these new themes that are incubated in the headquarter. Right? Do you believe the GCCs are now in a position to make proactive pitches? And does it help to incubate new teams? What success have you seen? Any insights around that?
Oh, absolutely. Do I believe? Yeah, definitely. I think you will see that actually quite a few GCCs are quite mature now, right? And they're fully capable of being able to do it. It's not just about making a pitch, or it's not just about making a proposal or something like that. That is always blessed by the headquarters. But I think things have radically changed over the last decade with the maturity of GCCs, where the capability is actually equally present, in a lot of the GCCs. For example, um, I can tell you we actually have somewhere about 8 or 10 fellows, or distinguished engineers, as we refer to in the industry, right? These are actually all individual contributors who are responsible for design and architecture of products, or systems, or what have you. We have various levels of leadership that actually global roles that are played out of India, for that matter, right? So a GCC is not the same as what it used to be 10, 15 years ago, where you always needed a blessing. So much so has actually changed that it is not only about being able to make a pitch, but it's also even the decision making capabilities of in some of the functions that are completely owned here also happen here, right? Where you are actually responsible for making those decisions, within the company. We talked about, like, the generative AI, or the university program example. In one of my previous roles, actually, we started a startup accelerator, for example, and then this was something in 2017, and the company had never ever done anything globally. So there is always this question about, oh, if we haven't done it in the US, why would you do it in India? So the question is, why not? Are you able to articulate the value that we bring to the company, in being able to do it? And then I think it's not that you don't actually face failures. It's not like every idea you pitch or everything you try works. And that is okay. That's the life in terms of, for startups, for example, right? Not every startup works either, and it's okay to be able to make those attempts, and then you may actually succeed in some, you may fail in some, and it's good to understand, in terms of when you fail, what was the reasons, and then so you don't necessarily repeat it, or what have you. But absolutely, the capability, I believe, is truly there, and we can talk a little bit about how we would, what do you do, and how does it work, and stuff like that. But I'll let Ankur add his thoughts too.
Sure. Thanks, Deepak. Thanks, Ashish. See, Ashish, in my mind, when we look at Lowe's India, we consider Lowe's India as just Lowe's based out of India, or an office based out of India. And very intentionally, we decided to not have a separate mission statement or a vision statement for Lowe's India, because for us, what matters is the Lowe's mission statement, vision, what we want to do it as a Lowe's, and not Lowe's India. Now, when coming to making the pitches or proposals, I don't think anybody in Los India has made any proposal in the last 3, 4 years, because they themselves own it. So it's not that they have to go and sell it to somebody else. They own the business goals. So, for example, the enterprise architecture team, which I talked about, the senior most leader is based out of India. Now, that person makes the decision when which technology we are going to buy, or which areas which we are going to build. Now that person is making the decision, so it's not pitching anything anymore. Similarly, we have the goals that we have to increase the .com revenue by so much, and then we have to increase the, let's say, conversion by so much. Now the search leader who is based out of India has to make the decision about what functionality, feature, capabilities, how they are going to build it, and all those things. It doesn't have to make the pitch at all. Similarly, a lot of things when it comes to, let's say, last mile delivery. Again, we have our goals that it has to be NPS has to go up, but last mile delivery person is based out of India. He or she can make the decision about how we are going to do it, how it will be implemented. Are we going to take some software? Are we going to build it in house? How the routing app will look like? How the sourcing or promising will look like? All those things. So it's no longer taking up a proposal or picking up an idea and then going to somebody saying that, can you bless it? Because the way Lowe's India is structured now, or Lowe's is structured, I would say, is everybody owns a particular capability, or whoever owns that particular capability owns it globally. So you are not going to saying that, hey, just because you are in India, you have to go somebody. It's vice versa. Like you have, even if you might be sitting in US, you might be having team over here. If you're sitting in India, you might be having team over there. Now, I'll give you one example just to put things into perspective. There is something called Lorman, which is Lowe's One Roof Media Network. It's all about site monetization. When you go to the .com site, you see sponsored ad and those kind of things. A couple of years back, we hired the first person into that domain, that particular area, the leader for that, Lorman. Once it got fully developed, we made $1 million out of it. That's where we took it globally and saying that, okay, now because this functionality or this capability is with us, to take it global, we need a bigger teams for sales and marketing with our vendor partners, and that's how we did it. And for last couple of years is one of the fastest growing media network. Now everything started from India. We didn't have to take anybody's permission because people knew, everybody knew that, hey, this is something which you want to do it, we can do it anywhere.
Yeah, very, very interesting. So, Ankur, Deepak, I think yours is a very unique situation where you have a lot of global functional leadership based out of here, but a lot of GCCs don't have that. Right? I mean, they
Agree.
do not have global process owners or global function owners. So, from your current situations or from your past experiences, how would you really go about building or shaping a new proposition or getting a new capability to India? In that situation where you do not have the global ownership.
Yeah, agree. Definitely, because everything is an evolution, right? A lot of GCCs do evolve in terms of where they start to, where to be able to achieve that kind of maturity, right? Definitely, I've gone. We've all gone through that kind of evolution from the last couple of decades. In my mind, I think that's a great question. Often you really build it over the years, and then the experience comes over the years, and it varies a little bit by the company because of the culture and because of how they operate and what their priorities are. In my mind, I think there are probably four things that will probably help in terms of how to what would I tell people to focus on, right? Number one, I would say, is build transparency. I think building transparency helps a lot in establishing that trust and confidence in the leadership teams, in the executive leadership teams at the headquarters. Often, people tend to focus on painting a rosy picture all the time, right? And that's not necessarily helpful. I think it is actually fine to be very, pretty transparent, be able to share where the challenges are, but it's also important to share, what are you doing about those challenges, or how are you addressing those challenges, or what have you, and then bring that transparency. And I think that really works to get the right ears for your ideas and what you do. That is number one. Number two, I think aligning with the enterprise priorities, and then what I refer to as value creation. Right? I think that is very important. If you're going orthogonal to your enterprise strategy and its priorities, it doesn't really help to build confidence, with the folks at the headquarters. For example, let's say if your company is focused on selling to the enterprise segment, right? And you come up with an idea to be able to create a product down market, does it align? Obviously not. Would you get all the years in to hear about the product? Probably not, right? If you are a B2B company, and then that's the segment you operate in, it would be a hard thing to go, with a proposal to sell something into a consumer business, for that matter, right? So that it is very important to understand that alignment with enterprise, priorities, and then being able to make sure that you create the right values, right? There is often a wish, in the GCCs that, oh, I want to create something for India. I think, really, if you think about what Ankur said, it's Lowe's in India. It's not something that is completely different. That concept really helps in terms of understanding that, if it is not aligned to the priorities, it probably doesn't help, right? Number three, is bringing a solution to the problem that I talked about. When you go with an idea, also think about how can you actually offer a solution. It's not always about being able to get, a few $100,000, or what have you, of the funding for a particular idea. It's actually more important to be able to say, here is the idea, here is how I can actually partially do it, how I can actually fully do it, when what is the value that it can deliver, right? Number four, I would say, is the right talent. It is very important to have the right talent to be able to back up that idea, essentially to be able to say, how are you going to execute that? And then lastly, I would say, do a few things insanely well. This is a mantra that I keep telling myself and to everybody else. It is much better to do two things very well rather than running behind 10 things and doing them in a mediocre fashion, if you will. So it is really good to be able to address or identify those top priorities for your center, and then be able to focus on them and really execute them to perfection. And those are probably the 4 or 5 things that I would say would definitely help in establishing that trust and confidence, establishing the value, establishing a path towards being able to really build the maturity in the GCC, if you will.
Yeah, no, thanks, Deepak. So, Ankur, from your past experience, any good practices or best practices for building the business case? So, once you identify that there are some opportunities, how do you build the business case, proactive pitches, navigating stakeholders? It can be challenging given there could be so many silos. Even funding for those POCs, how would you have gone about that maybe in the past?
Yeah. So, Ashish, I'll talk a little bit about your previous question too, because Lowe's 4 years back uh, had very few global roles, and had very few leadership roles in India, and most of the things wasn't happening in US. So, just to give you the numbers, we were close to 2,000 people associates in Bangalore, and had only like 9 or 10 functional roles. There were a couple of more roles in facilities and HR, those kind of things. But in the line, it's only less than 10 roles were there, which I call it a leadership role. Today, where we sit, we are close to around 5,000 people, but 120 plus leadership roles. And all of these roles are global roles. And how we got from 10 to 120, I think the biggest thing, as Deepak mentioned, was the talent. Now, see, here is the thing. Working from, like, let's say US and then India, 10,000 miles apart, it's not easy. It's difficult. And how do you sell it that 10,000 miles makes sense is by hiring the best and the brightest of the talent, and making sure that the talent is learning every single day about your organization priorities, about your business, to be able to say that, hey, it really makes sense for me to go 10,000 miles apart. And the third thing, which I said, is perseverance. Earning success once doesn't mean that you don't have to do anything for next 6 months or a year. You have to every single day earn your success. So those are the things. Now, coming back to your question about proposals, this kind of things. See, as I mentioned earlier, that in Lowe's kind of setup, everybody has their defined goals. So let's say if I'm part of my infrastructure team, our goals are that we had to ensure that our NPS for the customers, which is our associates only primarily, has to going up by few points every single year. We have to have less number of incident. We have to have less number of outage. The the licensing cost or the all the expense and capital has to go down every single year. Now, those kind of things we definitely can ensure that everybody has their OKR, their proposals, and the teams are building out all those things. And if we're aligning with the organization priorities, generally we don't have to struggle too much about that. But now going back to 4 years back, even saying that, hey, can we have this particular role played from India? It wasn't easy. But when we start producing the profiles, so for example, I'll give you the enterprise architecture vice president who is based out of India. 5 years experience in Target, few years in Walmart, few years in Amazon. Any retailer would want to have that kind of profile. And then, if you have that kind of profile, if you know the person can really deliver the stuff, I think you can sell those proposals. See, as long as there is no hidden interest in the proposal, it is all about your parent company, your main company, aligned to their objectives, not thinking only about India or this particular building or this particular center. I think over a period of time, people will realize that, or people do realize that, hey, it is the right thing to do for the organization, and let's go and do it.
Yeah, yeah, no, totally. Sukanya, any other observations from the industry that you've picked up around how to align these priorities and identify opportunities and pitch?
Yeah, I think most of it has been covered, but I think what helps a lot is to build those bridges. I think once you understand the business, once you understand what is it that your leadership is setting the goal, and very importantly, what are those five top strategic goals declared by your CEO, right? Not just your immediate organization, but how is your CEO defined the target? Is it in terms of a new market? Is it in terms of a new product segment? Is it in terms of a new technology accessibility need? And then how do you tie up your offering, or what you take care of, or what is the new solution that you have in your mind to a CEO goal? I think if you're able to get to that point, and then obviously confidence building for organizations that has happened, been here for a while and have some proven track record is easier. For the newer ones, how do you use your ecosystem, parallel channels of innovation to maybe create a POC? Um, how do you orchestrate your leadership visit, right? When your global leaders are coming to India, right? Are you presenting to them the work that was expected to do, or do you always have these two three ideas to be presented which have been done additionally because you guys, your teams think these are great ideas to be presented, and maybe those ideas won't go in, but the leaders would go back with the impression that the team here really has started to understand what the organization needs and has started to think through those. So I think you'll have to think through that curation very consciously and systematically. And every leadership visit should plug those opportunities and those interactions as well. So, yeah, I think those are some of the things that I can offhand think about.
Yep.
Even our leadership team, are they exploring outside to understand what's happening in the ecosystem that your organization can leverage, or is it all being thought internally? I think that's another important area.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a great segue into another theme that we wanted to deep dive into, which is around collaboration and integration, especially these ecosystem relationships Sukanya talked about. These are not just with system integrators, providers. There are startups, academia, and that's external, but internally as well within the organization, there are cross-functional initiatives, strategic projects. So, how do you really integrate well with the enterprise and collaborate to really deliver this value proposition? So, question to Ankur. Ankur, how do you ensure the right levels of internal collaboration within the org? I know you do have the global functional leadership, but again, there are different pieces of the puzzle spread globally. How do you do that? And we also have a question from one of our audiences, Anshul, who's asked about how do you align teams towards strategic goals using frameworks like OKRs. I don't know if you've had any exposure to that, but if you can
Sure.
share your thoughts.
Yes, Ashish. So here is the thing. I think it's much easier to align team cross-functionally when it comes to in India, and I'll tell you the reason. Because India, everybody is located in one building, wherein when we go to the Los US, there are multiple buildings: one building for technology, one building for merchandising, one building for, let's say, store ops and those kind of things. And generally, if you see, there is little less number of meetings happens during the daytime over here. So when people come into the office, they can bump into each other, walk into each other, and then have the informal conversation. So we encourage a lot of those informal conversation to understand what's going on into the business side. And we try to build a team in such a way that if I'm doing technology over here, let's bring the business process also over here, and let's bring something else, operations kind of work over here, so that teams are becoming a lot more self-sufficient. And the collaboration is encouraged quite a bit. we, but having said that, we also have to collaborate with our US team. So that's a lot of those evening calls, video meetings, or the travel that helps us collaborate internally. Now, when it comes to collaborating with academia, we do work with a lot of institutes, whether it's ISC or ISP or IIT Madras or Harvard, with specific problems. At the same time, we also work with a bunch of startups if we feel that they can add a value to us, or if we are trying to do some sort of proof of concept or pilot with them. So that's how we try to do the collaboration within inside the organization and outside the organization also. And now Anshul's question about OKRs in entire technology team works primarily on OKRs. So we make sure that it is already defined for each and every teams, each and every capability or product team. And it's not that we were always doing OKRs. We started this journey 3 or 4 years back. And what we realized is it makes it very, very objective when it comes to decision making. And people are not doing things based just because they liked it. It has to have the value to it. It becomes very helpful when we are prioritizing between multiple things if you have clearly written OKRs. So yes, OKR, in my opinion, is very helpful tool, and it really makes things much easier to execute.
Yeah, yeah. Deepak, I know you also partner a lot with the external ecosystem. So, what challenges do you face as you engage with external partners, whether it's startups, universities? Maybe if you can share a bit of that journey and any learnings for our participants.
Sure. Just to add one thing to the question on the chat, right, with respect to using OKRs, the only thing I would probably say in terms of from a GCC context is that look to be able. I mean, OKR is another framework, right? It's a way to be able to align your teams to your strategic priorities, and that's not the only way to probably do it. My advice is, make sure that it is done the same way across the globe. You don't have to go reinvent something. If the entire organization is doing something, you don't have to go create an OKR framework if it is not actually used. Then you will have unnecessarily have to go sell that way of actually a method of working that is not the company is not used to or what have you. So to the most part, I think that if it is something that is used in the entire organization, absolutely, and OKRs do work very well, from that point of view. Now, to your question in terms of the collaboration, especially, let's say, focusing externally. I think Ankur talked about internal alignments. Maybe I can focus a little bit on the external alignments. I will probably take an example in our case, which may be a little bit unique to Pega, but I think it is also something that is potentially very interesting for other GCCs as well. So Pega, if you look at it, our client base or our customers predominantly are the largest enterprises in the world, right? A significant majority of our revenues come from the top 200, 250 companies in the world for that matter, right? So we're really very focused on that segment of the market. And if you look at that spread, these top 200 to 500 companies in the world actually all have their own global capability centers in India. Pretty much, I mean, if you look at all of those names, pretty much all of them actually have their own centers here in India. And not just that, if they are actually a Pega customer, if they are a Pega client, they actually have their own Pega practices located in India too. Right? So we have a large GCC that is focused on being able to build the world class products out of here, and then you have an ecosystem that really actually has a large practice where there are people who are using our products, building applications on top of it, addressing their use cases in terms of how they deploy it within their companies and what they do. Not only that, there is a third piece. We also have the largest population of SIs, if you will, like the system integrators here in India. All of the partners that actually are experts in Pega technology, who actually help our customers in terms of build applications on top of Pega technology, also exist in India. So we have a fantastic ecosystem here. We don't have to wait for anything, to be able to go all across the world to come back to say, oh, there is a team in India, or in Bangalore or in Hyderabad or wherever, sitting and actually doing this thing, and then it goes all the way and comes around. So what we've done is really to be able to start, over the last 12 months. It's actually a new program that we put in place to be able to establish those relationships, to understand the client base that is actually located here, who is doing what with our products, and how can we actually help them, who are the partners, and then how can we enable them. That has been a revelation, and I think that is something that we don't necessarily typically leverage enough. And I think there is a huge opportunity in terms of being able to do it. Yes, there are always challenges, right? In terms of, these are always double-edged swords, right? Do you get separate headcount, or do you get questions as to why are you doing this? Of course, they will always be there, right? But the idea of the value that it creates in us being able to understand, we are developing products here. If we really know who is using the products and how they're using, what better ecosystem can you have, in terms of being able to have that feedback, right? So we need to ensure that we communicate, okay, we're not trying to run a parallel program here, or a parallel company here, or something like that, right? And we are fully aligned with what we are earlier talked about in terms of enterprise priorities. And make sure that the leaders and the engineers that you put in front of your customers are actually trained, or actually completely enabled with what they need to do. I think this is a fantastic opportunity that GCCs do have.
Yeah, so Deepak, that's a new dimension you highlighted. So we've often talked about partnering with the ecosystem, the partners, our suppliers, our academia, startups. But I think partnering with your customers, who the GCCs of your end customers who are based here, and I think that's a very very interesting dimension, and I'm sure a lot of that will happen as this ecosystem matures, and as more global roles come to India. I think it's gonna be a very very interesting proposition. So Ankur, let's talk about talent. I think that's like one of the big issues, right? And for any new capability build, or to scale, right, or to talk about any new proposition. So and within talent, of course, the entire value chain of how do you attract talent, how do you then develop, retain, and so on. What have been some of your challenges through this journey at Lowe's?
Yeah, Ashish. So here's the thing: the first that people didn't know what Lowe's is. So when we open our centers, or even for first 6 years, 7 years, people didn't know much about Lowe's, because even if you are traveling to US and visiting some retail stores, it won't be Lowe's. It probably would be Walmart, Target, Macy's, and those kind of things. So the first few years was to focus on building the brand out in the industry, and so a lot of those things were done. So just to give you an example or some numbers or context is, 4 years back we had close to 17,000 followership in LinkedIn, and today we probably have 300,000 followership on the LinkedIn. So just taking the name out, participating in various industry surveys, those kind of things, making a very intentional effort in terms of what we are putting out on LinkedIn, what we are putting out on different social media, and then to attract the talent, you have to have the great work coming in. Now again, it's a chicken and egg situation. Great work will require talented people. So another thing what we did is when we did hiring in the leadership roles, we also looked at it, how much ability they have, influence they have to bring a lot more people, or how much followership they have in the industry to bring a lot more people into the thing. And then a lot of creative ideas in terms of what do you say, attracting the talent, hackathons, different type of hackathons, building industry connects. I still remember 2019, 2020, the leadership team, like couple of us, we met almost 1,000 people in less than 10 months, just to make sure that, hey, someday it might become a good talent for us. So just going out, speaking to people, talking about the work. And a lot of time we had people when we didn't know exactly what work will happen, but getting that kind of profile and those kind of things. And see, here is the thing, attrition is challenge for the industry everywhere. But if you have good work, a competitive pay, and a culture where everybody is valued, empowered, and treated with respect, I think you will face a little bit less challenge in terms of attrition. So those are some of the things which we have done.
Yeah, yeah. We have a question here from Nihal. Is an in-person attendance in office critical to boost innovation and collaboration? Anyone would like to take it?
That's a favorite topic
Go
of
ahead,
the
Deepak.
day. That's a favorite topic of the day. I think we the obviously the entire pandemic time frame really changed some of the perspectives on how people look at it, right? And I think I personally believe it is absolutely essential for people to be together. Just now, like Ankur was actually talking about, the huge advantage we have in GCCs in India is that it is a microcosm. Most GCCs are a microcosm of the global company. Like he talked about having all of the departments under one, in one building. Where else, typically in most companies, you can never find that opportunity. You can never, never walk across to a completely different organization and have a, water cooler conversation and be able to really get something done. Right? It is an incredible opportunity. I believe personally that in-person presence definitely helps in terms of collaboration. I think it is a huge advantage to be able to have that kind of a microcosm come together. At the same time, I do believe in flexibility. Yes, we need to be flexible. We need to be able to allow people to, especially in the current scenario of operating, right? Yeah, would it be good for a team to be in the office, let's say 3 days a week? I surely believe it would be, right? We
Yeah.
certainly look, and for that matter, we typically have maybe about 60% of our workforce come into work at least 3 days a week or what have you, which really fuels some of that innovation. I certainly believe it is much better to do that than you being on a WebEx or a Zoom or a whatever, talking to the biggest thing is typically, if you are remote, you're working with your team probably 90% of the time and you're talking to the same people. You're really never getting out of that bubble, and that actually stifles innovation in a way, in my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also a lot about building the culture, and especially with a lot of people joining in and the new fresh talent. I think at least we've seen that that really helps if they meet
Absolutely. Culture is an
and
incredibly important piece. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Culture is
So,
incredibly important.
so just to add, see, it's not like innovation cannot happen in a remote model, but the effort that an enterprise, as well as the individual, that that very conscious effort that the both have to take to get there. I think it happens much more seamlessly when people are together and talking. So if someone is looking for a remote working option and also wants to be very innovative, that person has to also think through how he or she will build her interactions with the rest of the enterprise. So they will have to figure out other channels to identify those opportunities to interact with a diverse set of people, which has to be a very conscious effort, and people need to put effort into it. It's just not going
Yeah,
to
yeah.
happen seamlessly as it would happen if you were in office.
Right, right. And so, Kanya, we're almost on the top of the hour, but any quick thing from your side? NASCOM is at the heart of talent, but just to wrap up, is there what is NASCOM seeing, doing? Anything you would love to share, new hot off the
Yeah.
press?
I think very quickly I'll touch upon two things. NASCOM, of course, has the entire Sector Skills Council and Future Skills, which is very, very focused on building next gen skills. So we have a Future Skills Prime platform, which is available free to cost to anybody, students as well as individuals, where you have pathways on new age skills that have been built by our member companies, which is available. A lot of our enterprises use the Future Skills platform to reskill and upskill their own team members, where we actually have pathways starting from, if you were in this kind of background and this is the kind of skill you were getting, what would that journey be? So you could go through the certification. Our focus on academia and how do we improve readiness at an entry level is also very high. So we work with schools, colleges to see how those curriculums can be enhanced. And we do a lot of these innovation programs where we have a very strong startup team. Enterprises and startups can actually come and collaborate on specific use cases or more long term on years. Our idea is how do we accelerate this entire ecosystem building, right? So, and create parallel channels for collaboration and innovation. So all of those, I mean, I could speak for a longer time, but I'll be conscious about the fact that we've crossed our time by 2 minutes. But there are many opportunities, and if anybody wants to understand the building platforms that we have, would be happy to take questions offline.
Awesome, awesome. No, thank you, Sukanya, and thanks a lot, Ankur and Deepak, for joining us and sharing your experiences. I think it was terrific and hopefully good learning for all the participants. We would love to do more of this, so watch out for more of these GCC leadership sessions with the expert practitioners. But again, thank you everyone for joining us, and look forward to seeing you again. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you. Have a
Pleasure,
good
Thank
day.
you,
Ashish.
Ashish, and thank you, Sukanya.
Pleasure, Ashish. Thank you.
Cheers. Bye
Thank you.
bye.
Yeah.
Bye.